She added a white powder into her sister's pepper soup, staring and saying, "You think you can take my man away from me? By the time I am done with you, you will know why they call me Elvira." Before that tragic day, Elvira and Stephanie were two sisters bound by blood, yet so different in heart. Elvira was the elder, elegant, proud, and always chasing luxury. She wore designer perfumes, carried expensive handbags, and believed love without money was foolishness. Stephanie, on the other hand, was soft and simple. She found happiness in small things. One sunny afternoon, Elvira stopped by a supermarket after work. She was dressed neatly, a red-fitted dress, light makeup, and gold earrings. While picking some groceries, she accidentally dropped her purse. A man beside her quickly bent to pick it up. "Here, miss, you dropped this," he said with a gentle smile. Elvira smiled back politely. "Oh, thank you." He looked humble, plain shirt, simple shoes, nothing flashy. They exchanged a few words, and when she was about to leave, he asked, "Can I call you sometime? Maybe we could talk again." Elvira hesitated, then nodded. Sure. That was how she met Stanley. They spoke on the phone a few times, and met for coffee twice. But Elvira couldn't get past one thing: he looked too ordinary. No car. No luxury watch. No fine restaurant dates. She started ignoring his calls, and one day, out of frustration, she blocked his number. "That kind of man can't give me the life I want," she told herself. And just like that, Stanley was out of her life. 2 years passed. Elvira moved to a different city, working in a boutique, still chasing her dream of marrying rich men. And her sister, Stephanie, came back home from nursing school. She told Elvira about her new boyfriend and his plans of getting married to her. Elvira raised an eyebrow playfully. "Really? So my little sister is getting married before me?" Stephanie laughed shyly. "Maybe, you'll see him soon." Elvira smiled, teasing her, but something inside her felt uneasy. The following weekend, Stephanie arrived home with her fiancé. Elvira was in the living room, dressed elegantly as usual, waiting to meet the mysterious man. When the door opened and she saw him, her smile froze. The man standing beside Stephanie was Stanley. For a second, time stopped. Stanley's face changed too, his eyes widening in disbelief. But both quickly composed themselves. "Elvira," Stephanie said happily, "this is Stanley, the man I told you about." "Stanley, this is my elder sister, Elvira." Elvira forced a smile, stretching her hand. "Oh, nice to meet you," she said softly. "Nice to meet you too," Stanley replied politely, pretending not to know her. The atmosphere was tense, though Stephanie didn't notice. She was glowing with excitement, talking about wedding plans and their future together. Elvira sat quietly, nodding and smiling, but her mind was in chaos. When Stanley and Stephanie finally left that day, Elvira stood by the window, her heart burning. She murmured under her breath, "So this is the same man I pushed away. I didn't know he was this fine, this rich. If I had known." She bit her lip, her hands trembling slightly. Months later, Stephanie and Stanley got married. The wedding was beautiful, simple but elegant. Stephanie looked radiant in her white gown as Stanley stood proudly beside her. Friends and family filled the hall, music played softly, and everyone's faces glowed with joy. Everyone except Elvira. She sat quietly at one corner of the hall, smiling just enough to hide the storm raging inside her. Each time she looked at her younger sister standing beside Stanley, her stomach turned. When the crowd cheered and Stanley leaned forward to kiss the bride, Elvira turned her face away, her eyes wet with silent tears. She left before the wedding reception ended. After the wedding, Stephanie moved into Stanley's luxurious home in the city, a big house with wide glass doors, a private garden, and cars parked neatly in front. Her life changed completely. She often called her sister, her voice always cheerful. "Elvira, how are you doing? You haven't come to see me yet," she would say. "Come spend a weekend here, please." Elvira always gave the same calm reply. "I will, sis. I'll come when you give birth." Stephanie would laugh softly. "Okay, I'll hold you to that promise." But Elvira had no intention of visiting. Every time she saw photos of Stephanie online, smiling beside Stanley, dressed in expensive outfits, traveling on vacations, something inside her twisted painfully. She would stare at the screen for minutes, zooming in on Stanley's face. Her lips would tighten. Her heart would whisper, "That could have been me." A year later, Stephanie became pregnant, and the whole family celebrated. Their mother called Elvira one evening, her voice full of excitement. "Elvira, your sister will soon make me a grandmother, and my son-in-law is taking good care of her, you won't believe it." Elvira will forced a smile she didn't feel. "That's good news, Mama. I'm happy for them." But as soon as she ended the call, she sat in silence, staring blankly at the wall. Happy for them? No. She was angry at herself, angry at fate, angry that she had once rejected the man who was now giving her sister everything she ever dreamed of. Months passed, and Stephanie gave birth to beautiful twins, a boy and a girl. Stanley named them David and Diana. The family group chat exploded with joy. Pictures of the babies filled everyone's phones. Stephanie's smile in every photo was pure and peaceful, the kind of joy Elvira hadn't felt in years. Stephanie called Elvira again. "Elvira, you promised you'd come when I give birth. The babies would love to see their aunt." Elvira hesitated for a long time before replying softly, "I know, sis. I'll come soon." But she never did. She couldn't bring herself to step into that house, the house she believed should have been hers. So she stayed away, pretending to be busy, while jealousy slowly poisoned her heart. 3 years passed. The world moved on, but Elvira's life stood still. She was now 32, still single, still renting the same small apartment she'd lived in for years. Her once busy phone hardly rang anymore. The men who used to chase her, the ones she looked down on, had all disappeared. Some got married. Some simply stopped calling. And the few who showed interest seemed unserious, broke, or already attached. Elvira tried to stay strong, but loneliness was eating her slowly. Every morning, she'd wake up, scroll through her phone, and see photos of her sister and Stanley living the life she had once dreamed of. Stephanie's family looked perfect, her handsome husband, her beautiful twins, their smiling faces in matching outfits, traveling to places Elvira could only imagine. Each post felt like a knife to her chest. One Sunday afternoon, she sat on her bed, her face blank, the phone still in her hand. Tears gathered in her eyes as she whispered to herself, "Why am I the one suffering? Why me?" Her voice trembled. "Stephanie took everything that was supposed to be mine. I met Stanley first. He was supposed to be my husband." She stood up suddenly, pacing the room. Her heart pounded fast, anger boiling through her veins. "No," she said aloud, "I can't sit here and keep watching her enjoy what belongs to me." That night, she barely slept. Thoughts flooded her mind, dark thoughts. By morning, she made up her mind. She would visit her sister. Not as the kind, smiling Elvira everyone knew, but as a woman determined to reclaim what she believed life had stolen from her. The next week, Elvira called Stephanie for the first time in months. "Hello, sis," she said, forcing a cheerful tone. "It's been a while. I've missed you and the twins. I think I'll come visit next weekend." Stephanie's voice lit up with joy. "Oh, Elvira, that's the best news I've heard all week. The children will be so happy. Please, come and stay as long as you want." Elvira smiled faintly at the other end. "I will, sis. I really will." When the call ended, her smile faded. She sat quietly for a long moment, then whispered, "This time, I'm not just visiting. I'm taking back what's mine." Elvira arrived at Stephanie's home one Saturday morning, dressed beautifully but with a heavy heart. Stephanie ran to hug her the moment she stepped in. "Oh, Elvira, you finally came," she said with genuine excitement. Stanley smiled warmly too, shaking her hand. "You're welcome, Elvira. It's good to finally have you around." The first week passed peacefully. Elvira helped in the kitchen, played with the twins, and even joined family dinners. But each time she watched how tenderly Stanley treated his wife, how he smiled at her, held her hand, or called her my queen, something twisted inside her. At night, she would lie awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about her evil plans. One afternoon, Stanley took the twins out for a short trip to the park, leaving Elvira and Stephanie alone at home. It was a quiet day, the air was soft, and the house smelled of freshly cooked pepper soup goat meat. Elvira had served Stephanie. Stephanie sat at the dining table eating and chatting cheerfully. She told Elvira about her plans to open a charity foundation, about how blessed she felt, and how she wished Elvira would soon find love too. Her words were kind, but to Elvira, they sounded like mockery. In that moment, something dark shifted inside her. She smiled faintly and said, "You've really built a good life for yourself, Steph. You deserve it." Stephanie laughed softly. "You'll have your own happiness too, Elvira. I'm sure of it." Elvira looked at her, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Minutes later, Stephanie suddenly began to feel weak. At first, she thought it was just tiredness. Then she stood, holding her chest, confused and scared. "Elvira," she called faintly. Elvira stood there smiling as Stephanie's breath caught in her throat. Later, she carried her gently to the bedroom, laying her on the bed as if she had simply fallen asleep. Every movement was careful. For a long time Elvira sat beside the bed crying. She called out a little, "Steph, wake up, please, sister." Inside, her heart hammered, but she kept her face wet with tears. She would not let panic show, she could not afford it. 30 minutes later she went to the front room and dialed Stanley's number with hands that tried to appear steady. "Stanley, come home now," she said between breaths, her voice cracking. "Something is wrong with Stephanie. Please, hurry." She could hear the worry in her own voice and used it like a mask. Stanley came back in a rush, his car squealed in the drive, he burst through the door, breathless, and froze when he saw Elvira sitting on the sofa, makeup streaked from fake tears. "What happened?" he demanded, eyes scanning the house. Elvira stood up and ran to him, falling into his arms as if she had been waiting desperately. "I tried waking her up this afternoon but she refused to wake up." Stanley ran to the room, grabbed Stephanie's hand and called out for the maids and the driver. He shouted for cold water, for towels, for the car keys. His voice was raw with fear. Elvira followed him into the bedroom, sobbing loudly, supporting him as he knelt by the bed. He checked her pulse, then looked back at Elvira with a face split between terror and pleading. "Call an ambulance," he ordered. Elvira's throat worked. She picked up her phone and dialed, tears streaming down her face. At the hospital, despite every effort, the doctors pronounced Stephanie dead. Stanley collapsed into a chair, the sound of his grief filling the small room. Elvira fell beside him, keening, clutching his sleeve. "She's gone," she kept repeating, each time louder. "She's gone. I don't understand." At that moment, everyone in the room believed her, the sister in shock. The next days moved like a nightmare. Condolences came in, flowers filled the entrance hall, and neighbors and relatives crowded the house. Elvira's face was bedraggled and red, but on the inside she was already planning her next moves, how to stay close to Stanley, how to be the comfort he needed, how to steer the house into her control while everyone else mourned. She stood at the funeral by Stanley's side, holding his hand, crying as he spoke about Stephanie's kindness, her love for the twins, and how life had robbed him of the one person who made him whole. In private, Elvira turned Stephanie's photo to face her and whispered things a sister should never whisper. Then she put on the mask again, the grieving sister, the support, the one who would now help raise David and Diana. After Stephanie's burial, Elvira stayed around the house, pretending to be the grieving sister offering support. But deep down, her heart was already scheming. She knew Stanley would never look at her the same way he looked at Stephanie. So one dark evening, she visited a native doctor in a lonely part of town. "I want him to love me," she whispered. "I want him to see me and forget everyone else." The old man looked at her for a long moment before shaking his head. A few weeks later, she returned to Stanley's mansion dressed in black, pretending to check on the twins and offer comfort. Her presence felt strange, but Stanley was too broken to notice. Within a month, everything changed. Stanley began to look at her differently. He stopped talking about Stephanie. He started calling Elvira more, using the pet names he once used for his wife. Soon, he proposed marriage quietly, no ceremony, no family, no blessing. When the news reached their village, everyone was shocked. How could she marry her sister's husband? They murmured. Elvira's parents were heartbroken. They refused to attend the wedding, calling it a curse wrapped in a celebration. But Elvira didn't care. For the first time in her life, she felt she had everything: money, luxury, a husband, and the house she once envied. She was living the life she thought she deserved. Months passed. Elvira became pregnant, and her heart was filled with joy. Stanley, too, was happy. Everything seemed perfect. Until the months turned into something strange. 9 months came, but there was no sign of birth. 10 months. 11. 12. Her body grew heavier, her steps slower, her nights longer. Stanley took her from one hospital to another, but doctors found nothing wrong. Out of desperation, Elvira began visiting spiritual healers, prophets, and herbalists, anyone who could explain what was happening. But everywhere she went, she heard the same chilling words. "Confess what you did." She would frown, pretending not to understand. "I don't know what you're talking about." But deep down, she knew. 2 long years passed. Elvira's body had become frail, her face pale, her eyes sunken with fear. She could no longer sleep. Whispers haunted her at night. Stanley didn't know what was wrong. He prayed, he fasted, he cried, but nothing changed. On the night that marked exactly 2 years and 7 months of her pregnancy, Elvira went into labor. Her screams echoed through the mansion like thunder. Doctors rushed in, prayers filled the air, but Elvira's strength was gone. Before dawn, the cries stopped. Elvira had taken her last breath. When the news reached her village, everyone wept, not only for her death but for the life she had chosen. Some said it was karma. Others said it was a curse. But one thing everyone agreed on was that envy is a silent fire, it burns the one who carries it. And that was how Elvira's story ended, a painful reminder that what belongs to another can never bring peace to you. Hope you have subscribe and like for more interesting stories.